everybody for joining us today. I'm delighted to be here and share some of my knowledge and expertise in the field of creating immersive design experiences. I built my career in R&D and innovation in designing with emerging technologies that connect physical and digital worlds together. And I believe we are all here today because we all realize and admit the shift that the introduction and adoption of immersive technologies and the concept of Metaverse is bringing to design. So this is a radical challenge for the design industry because it requires a completely different set of skills, methods, and tools for us to design something such complex and exciting as Metaverse. For the next 30 minutes, I will be talking about immersive design, what it is, how it evolved, why it is so important these days, and what it actually takes to design engaging immersive experiences. So let's start with defining immersive design itself. From all the definitions that you can find, you will see three major points that differentiate immersive design from the rest of the design field. The first is it allows multiple levels of interaction. Second, it applies immersive technologies. And third, it leads users to be fully immersed, engaged, and absorbed in an experience. So immersive design has been developing with the development of immersive technologies. But immersive design is really so much more beyond technology. And there is proof of this when we look back in history. So the first immersive experiences actually appeared in theater and entertainment industries. If we think of examples like Sleep No More show in New York City or Cirque du Soleil in Vegas, these are great examples of immersive experiences that happen in theater that didn't really involve any technology, but the experience design itself. Then think of theme parks and amusement parks such as Universal Studios or Disneyland. Those are great examples of not only immersive experiences, but also prototypes of some sort of metaverse created in physical space. The gaming industry was always in the forefront of development of these exciting technologies and this design. Second Life, which is the prototype of the first metaverse, was developed back in the 90s and was popular back then. And the film industry is always the great reflection of imagination we as humanity have about immersive worlds and immersive experiences. Westworld, for example, or Avatar are great illustrations of that. The most recent, the second wave of immersive design happened in the past 5 years, just before the pandemic. And that was characterized by the boom of Instagram museums, fun houses, experiential retail, and basically entertainment industry and retail industry rethinking the purpose of space. Well, they moved their sales of their products into digital space. They started repurposing the physical space into experiential and entertainment industry and in the business of happiness. At the same time, we saw the maturing of AR and VR technologies. We saw the first games appearing on those platforms. And that wave was suddenly hit by the pandemic when the physical space became irrelevant when we got into the lockdowns. So that macroeconomic happening had a huge effect on the immersive design itself. So all of our lives shifted into digital space. So did the immersive design. And luckily, the immersive technology advanced to this point where it's allowing it to happen in virtual space. So what we see now is a lot of immersive experiences appearing in virtual worlds and workspace even being redesigned for the metaverse. We see digital art finally being recognized and having the value assigned to it with NFT and blockchain. We have virtual retail. We have major retailers introducing digital products that are available for the purchase in the metaverse. We have virtual events, shows, like even a fashion show happening in the metaverse. And I'm not even talking about games, which is the most advanced industry in here. with major news like Fortnite partnering with Lego. This is huge, and this is happening not only because of the pandemic and our lives shift into virtual world, but also with the big tech companies and big retailers committing to building something as complex and exciting as Metaverse. We saw Facebook being renamed to Meta. We saw companies like Disney and major retailers appointing chief Metaverse officers. All these finally gave the confidence to the rest of the industry that this is really happening and this is worth the investment. So what happened after is actually Metaverse become the biggest buzzword, and everything technology related that we had before that is now coming into the umbrella of Metaverse. And yes, of course, it's a buzzword and it's overused, but it also gives us confidence that brands and content creators are hungry to get into that space. And for us in design, we need to understand why they're doing this and what it means for design. So why they're doing this? The first major reason is the emotional connection. There is plenty of studies that prove that immersive experiences, experiential storytelling, belonging to something as cool as Metaverse increases the lovability of brands and increases the satisfaction from the experiences actually from 25 to 200%. Recent reports from Vice Media show that 9 out of 10 young people would rather spend their money on an experience versus making a purchase of a product or service. And let's add the pandemic effects to this. We've been locked in our houses for about 2 years, and there's a lot of money that has been saved by households that are being used for these new experiences. So, second reason why the industries are rushing into this new space is the business expansion, because Metaverse, like in times of great discoveries, offers the new land, the new market. And in this market, not only the brands are willing to bring in the existing products and services, they're also willing to introduce new products and services that are specific for these new virtual worlds or the physical worlds augmented by augmented reality or any other tech that is out there. And of course, reason number 3 is content creation. Because Metaverse itself, to be built, will require a huge amount of content, visual, textual, audio, any sort of content, and new formats of content as well. And the major challenge for the design industry is the 3D content, because we used to design for 2D screens. So it is a huge challenge for design, even though we see the motivation for brands and content creators to move into the space. Now, as designers, we have to face the fact that the third dimension has been added on our plate. Not only the third, but the fourth and the fifth with virtual reality, with augmented reality. There are no longer buttons, there are no longer screens. We have to design for the physical world and add another layer to it. We have to design a virtual world. We need to think of ways to make it comfortable for users to interact in this world. And the second biggest challenge is that we as designers, when designing these interfaces, we have to operate with completely different set of tools and technologies that are enabling these experiences. Here we talk about voice interfaces, haptics, touch, body tracking, movement, eye gaze tracking, any sort of data that can be used to create an interactive experience. And we see glasses becoming the major wearable, major media enabling augmented reality experiences in the Metaverse in the next 5 years. So this is really challenging for design, but if we look at this from the user perspective, it is so natural for us to interact in the physical world using our hands, our body language, our facial expressions, looking each other in the eye, using our voice. So this actually is a great opportunity for design to create interfaces that are human-centric and more human-centric than ever before. So now we know that immersive design is working with technology in space. The next question is, how do we approach something as complex as designing for the metaverse and designing immersive experiences? Of course, by breaking down into smaller parts or layers. How can we design? How can we break down the design of the metaverse? We break it down into 3 layers by complexity. The first layer of complexity is virtual assets. Virtual assets are avatars, physical objects, 3D objects that have function and interact with, physical objects that create the immersion, that create the space itself and the interior design. And this is a huge opportunity for graphic design because every pixel that will exist in the metaverse will require hours of graphic design work. The second layer is immersive experiences. So we assume that any brand or any company will be able to create an immersive experience within a certain metaverse or across different metaverses. Here, we mean creating experiences, which means this is a huge field for interaction design and experience design. And here we talk not only about virtual spaces, but we also talk about physical spaces that are augmented by immersive technologies. And the third, the most complex level, is virtual worlds. Virtual worlds or metaverses is a huge field for opportunity for service and systems design, because here we have such challenges as digital identity or industry standards of interaction or shifting one experience from one metaverse to another. This is a very detail-oriented and like system and organizational challenge that we have, and that will require companies participating in this construction of the metaverse, collaborating together and working together to design something such complex as metaverses. So now when we understand the complexity, layers of complexity and the opportunities for different parts of design, let's move to break down the process of designing immersive experiences. Because designing immersive experiences will be something that any brand will be able to do, and any brand will need to understand how to do. So immersive experience not only contains interaction, immersive technology, and immersion itself, but it also has another component. So I would usually break down the immersive experience design process into 5 layers. By starting with one layer, we add another level on top, and then another level on top, and then another level on top. So from my experience designing these immersive experiences, there are usually 5 main layers that we have to consider and think through when we design an immersive experience. It's functional objects, it's navigation system, it's interaction, it's immersion, and it's a giveaway. So let's go through each of them. Objects of function is the core of designing an immersive experience. Objects of function define the purpose, why people come to your immersive experience. For example, if you build a virtual branch of your brand, the objects of function will represent the purposes why the people are coming to your brand, either bringing in the money or taking it out, or investment, or talking to a sales representative. So each object will represent one of those purposes. Or if you design an experiential storytelling where people are going through a story or having fun, then objects of function will be the installations or experiential, playful stations in the experience. So these are the milestones of the journey and the stops where users stop to do something either for purpose or for the sake of experience. Once we have this objects of function defined, now we add another layer to create the experience. We need to allocate this object in space in some sort of order and make users navigate here. So navigation system is a very important part of designing immersive experiences, because whether it's a physical space or a virtual world, here we're dealing with the 3D space. And defining a navigation system is very important. Here we need to think of how big our space is, how long we want our users to spend in the experience. So how far the non-functional objects will be allocated from each other from. Is it a guided experience or is it a self-discovery? Then is it important in which order the objects are allocated and how the users navigate, or can it be experienced without any particular order? So all these details need to be thought through while designing an immersive experience. And here we take the learnings from physical space, but also from virtual spaces. So in VR, we have some knowledge already on how to use controllers and how to use eye gaze to navigate through space. And there are the industry standards that are coming up in there that help us navigate through that. We also have to deal with motion sickness and frame rates, but we also take learnings from design of physical spaces and interior design. So we work with sound systems who can use light and sound to navigate people through space. And also the focal points. But thinking this through, what the user sees first and what gives them a clue how to move next is very important to think through. And this is part of the navigation layer of immersive experience. Now that we've figured out the navigation, we add the third layer, which is the immersion. So immersion means working with associated memory. Here we work with sensors, with sight, vision, touch, even taste and smell. If, for example, we want to design an immersive restaurant. Here, like effects like synesthesia, ASMR, added value. But immersion means that we want the user to have a feeling that they're being somewhere else. And to create that feeling, the most effective method here is to create a metaphor. For example, if we design a virtual home, I would design a tropical hut and body, or a futuristic apartment and a spaceship. This metaphor helps to create the idea of the environment that we want the user to be absorbed in. And to create this environment, we use tools, such tools as non-functional objects, for example, which are related to interior design, and the 3D objects that are created to create a feeling of space. We work with colors, we work with light, sounds, textures, materials, motion. So here we again take learnings both from physical space and from virtual spaces. So when we have the theme or the metaphor of immersion and we have to figure out all these details and make a feel of the space, then we need to decide how the user is interacting in these functional objects and how they interact with each other maybe in the space and how they interact with the space itself. And here, with immersive technologies, we have unlimited number of opportunities these days, because even in the physical space, everything can be enabled with touch. In virtual space, we can use controllers, we can use our gestures, we can use computer vision, and any sort of data that allows the input and output for users to interact with the space and a virtual object or physical objects in the space. And I would like to drag your attention to sound, voice interfaces, and gestures, because voice and gestures are the main interfaces that we use as humans to interact with the physical world, and the immersive technologies these days are catching up to be as good enough for us to be allowed to interact with the world and with each other and the objects in those virtual physical spaces using these interfaces. And speaking of interfaces that are becoming the most popular in the metaverse are actually touchless interfaces. So when we use our gestures to navigate through space, to interact with virtual physical objects in space, and especially now, after the pandemic, we learned that nobody wants to touch the screen of an ATM, for example. Well, we can use the gesture tracking to enable users to interact with screens even. So the second main important interface is screenless interface. Yes, we still have screens and we still have touch, but the upcoming interfaces that we'll see more and more in the metaverse are screenless. That means that we will more and more use glasses to have another layer of information in physical space, or we will use VR headsets to interact with virtual worlds. Now, once we figure out the way to interact with these spaces and interact with the metaverse and interact with each other in the metaverse, there is another layer that is seen in any immersive experience that is engaging, and that component really creates the engagement and creates the lovability. That's called giveaway. And by giveaway, we don't mean something we're gonna give away here today, but we mean an object that will enable users to contain the memory of an experience. If we use a metaphor, that would be a souvenir, something that they can take home after completing the experience. So in physical space, we would use something tangible like a 3D printed object or a nice card or personalized contracts with each other about topic that we presented at the experience. But in gaming industries, they will use the tokens or new tools that will encourage you to come back. And this has a lot of opportunity for creativity these days with the development of crypto economy. Because we can see some examples in games that have the create to earn or play to earn business models. So these giveaway components might seem small, but is actually very important. And if you analyze the most immersive experiences that are out there, you'll see that it is there, and it is something that creates memory and creates the engagement and lovability of the experience. So these 5 layers have been presented in an order, and usually are applied in that order that I've just went through. However, this is not set in stone. So depending on the type of experience that you're designing, you can shape these components based on the need. For example, if you are recreating the physical space of your retail store in the virtual world, and you want the users to be immersed in there as if they're in an actual store, you would start with creating immersion first. You would start with recreating the space, with recreating the feeling of being in the store, and then you will add functional objects, ways to interact, giveaway, navigation, stuff like that. So it really depends on the experience, which component to start. But filling in these 5 enables you to understand what kind of resources we need to create in the project, who's coming to your experience, how they will interact with your space, how they will go through the space, what kind of space you're designing or experience you're designing, and what is the purpose and what they will be doing there and what they will be living with. So if you're really interested in deep diving into this topic, we actually launching an Immersive Design Foundations course where you will be able to deep dive in all these topics in details. We'll go through all these technologies and tools that enable immersive design. We'll go through immersive design framework, how to create the functional objects, how to design navigation systems, how to design the best experiential interaction, both in physical space, augmented by technology, and in virtual space, and how to create immersion memories. Something that we're doing for the first time, so you won't find this content anywhere. And this is really unique opportunity to jump into this field and get the knowledge from the practicing experts who've been working in this field for years.